In this video, I'm going to share with you one of the biggest pieces of advice I wish I would have known when starting out on my breaking sugar addiction journey. And also advice for losing weight or reversing insulin resistance, prediabetes. You know, one of the biggest things that we are preached at is to eat less and move more. But what does that lead to? Hunger, deep hunger. So if you are trying to break through a sugar addiction, or you're trying to lose weight and all of a sudden you just restrict your calories and go start running a bunch or going to the gym, that is great, but typically it backfires after about 2 weeks because our body gets so hungry. We typically end up slowing our metabolism down because our body's trying to conserve energy, and then eventually it falls apart and it leads to a binge and then feelings of moral failure and like, I can't do this, I have no willpower. Well, it's really hard to have enough willpower to overcome our biological drive to eat, to survive. And so in the beginning, when you are just starting out on getting healthy or really starting out on breaking through that sugar addiction, it is so helpful to not worry so much about the calories right now. Worry about the quality of your food. So that means focus on eating real food. The biggest thing that is going to help you is balancing your blood sugar and lowering your insulin. And this is so huge for anyone. If you are trying to lose weight or if you are pre-diabetic, insulin resistant, is getting your insulin down, getting it back into balance. Because we're eating tons of refined carbohydrates, a ton of processed seed oils, processed food. Typically that leads to high insulin levels and insulin resistance. This leads to a lot of other things like and this leads to so many other chronic illnesses. Things like hypertension, high blood pressure, things like PCOS, migraines, obesity-related illnesses. These are almost all rooted in insulin resistance. And what's the positive thing is that it's so reversible in so many cases through diet and lifestyle change. So you don't have to live on medication for the rest of your life. And to take matters in your own hands and in the beginning, to start with focusing on eat as much as you want of the right foods, you're gonna start developing the proper satiation signals. And that's how I broke through my sugar addiction, was committing to basically 30 days of just real food. When I say real food, I mean meat, fish, vegetables, eggs, whole fruit, nuts, seeds, real foods, things like paleo diet, things like ancestral dieting. If you are eating the standard American diet, to shift to that. And what this does is, number one, it helps get your insulin levels down, helps to balance blood sugar, helps you to actually feel satiated from food. I remember when I used to eat, I never felt satiated from food. I could have a full belly, like so distended, have eaten so much, binge eat on so much. I'd go to a restaurant and get pasta, be so full, and then come home and be looking in the pantry for cookies. Because my brain, felt like it was never satisfied. And a lot of that can be emotional too, but so much of it is the food that we're eating. And so it's so critical in this to know that the foods that you're eating that aren't driving huge dopamine spikes in your brain, which is what these hyperpalatable processed foods do, and also aren't driving a huge insulin response, leading to feeling hungry all the time, tired all the time, and in this fat storage mode. There's a Dr. Benjamin Bickman, he's awesome, and he's a PhD in bioenergetics, and he gives these 3 rules, and I love this. And number 1, control your carbs. And what that means is control the sourcing of your carbs. So your carbohydrates, this is what will put us on a blood sugar roller coaster, or the main macronutrient that spikes our insulin and causes insulin resistance. And so making sure that your carbohydrates are coming from real food sources. So not to demonize sugar or demonize carbs, but if you are in a state of prediabetes or obese or really struggling with sugar addiction, to be really mindful of the amount of carbs you're eating, but specifically where you're getting them from. So this would be things like getting them from vegetables, sweet potatoes, squash, things like berries, whole fruit, are real food sources of carbohydrates. So in the beginning, to let yourself, if you're having sugar cravings, reach for those things first. You don't have to deprive yourself of food right now. And this is a long game. So this isn't forever, not eating like this forever, but if you need, you're craving sugar, go grab a banana. Go grab something to hold you over and to make it through that withdrawal state. And then you can start, then you can start really focusing on the amounts. But first, just like in the first month, eat as much as you want of the right foods. It is so helpful to just at first break through the getting off the processed food, but don't try to do that with competing with hunger or trying to restrict your calories. And so I remember in the beginning for me, I was eating these I would roast bananas with cinnamon in a toaster oven, and so good, especially once you start getting off of the hyperpalatable foods. Real food tastes so good. Like I used to have to add like brown sugar to my sweet potatoes. No way anymore. Like they are so sweet because my taste buds have become so sensitive now to real food, and it just tastes better and it's so much more satiating. And with these foods, so tip number 2, so number 1, control your carbs. Eat only carbs that are coming from the earth. Even just X amount of days, can you commit to that for yourself? And then number 2, and this isn't forever, but it's just in the beginning, doing this for yourself to break through that processed food addiction. Number 2 is prioritizing protein, making sure that you are getting enough protein. Protein is gonna help you feel so satiated. It's not gonna give you a huge blood sugar spike. It'll help you control your blood sugar better. And sources of protein, best ones, grass-fed beef or ruminant animals, things like lamb, things like bison, elk, deer, and other sources of protein would be like chicken, turkey, wild-caught fish. Wild-caught fatty fish is great, things like wild-caught sardines. Others would be eggs, nuts, and seeds. So these are all ways you can get more protein in, but make sure that each meal that you have some source of protein, and that ideally, your snacks are also protein-based if you're eating snacks. Number 3 is don't fear fat. So fat has been so demonized in our culture, and it is the one macronutrient that is not gonna spike your insulin. So especially if you are pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetes, to not fear fat, but not all fat is created equal. So it's very important to eat healthy fats. And when I say healthy fats, what I mean are things like avocados, the fat that's on grass-fed beef, the fat that is in egg yolks. You don't need to dump your egg yolks out. The fat that is in ghee, which is grass-fed clarified butter. Things like olive oil, avocados, coconut oil, coconut, and avoiding as best as you can, avoiding things like canola oil, soybean oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, any vegetable oil or hydrogenated oil that can't believe it's not butter, like ditch that. And if you're at a restaurant, ideally be able to ask for the things to be cooked in olive oil. And this is so important because these processed seed oils can be so inflammatory to the body and promote that insulin resistance. And so to recap, 1, control your carbs, eat real food carbs when you're craving something. Number 2, prioritize protein. Number 3 is don't fear fat. Eat healthy fats, add them to your plate. Olives, like it's such a good snack if you like olives. And to, take it one day at a time, but it's so helpful to just commit even to like a 21 days, 30 days of just getting off the processed food and focusing on the quality of your nutrients and how your body's worth that. I know it can be difficult, but luckily there's been a lot of brands now that have real food ingredients. They may be processed foods, but they're made with real food. So just check your labels and start crowding out your plate. If you can't commit to like going 100% on the real food, like how can you look at each meal and like how can I get more real food on my plate and eat less convenient food? And if you need help with this, I lead a 21-day reset. The next one is January 2023. So that is 21 days where I will be guiding you through this to detox. And we also focus a lot on the emotional eating piece, because I can tell you all day what to eat, but a lot of times if we're eating out of stress, out of boredom, out of loneliness, things like that, that it is really hard to break these kind of toxic eating patterns. So it's learning those tools to navigate that. And then also one-on-one coaching. I coach one-on-one. If that interests you, if you want that one-on-one support, you can set up a strategy session with me at calendly.com/mindfulbelly, and we'll see if we'd be a good fit. And then I also have a podcast, so the Don't Eat Your Feelings podcast. I share a lot of tips and tools like in these videos, and have interviews with a lot of experts who can help you on your journey. And a lot of times just washing yourself over with this kind of information is so helpful for motivation, because we can hear it once and get really motivated, and that can sometimes we lose that. So it's just like continuously listening to stuff that reminds you, like, oh yeah, I want to show up for myself today. Oh yeah, eat protein. Oh yeah, get some healthy fats in. Oh yeah, choose a sweet potato over a candy bar. And one choice at a time. Every choice matters, and you matter. And I hope that you know that there is a light and you can heal, and you're doing awesome. So keep going.